Bibles, you might want to turn to Nehemiah, the 13th chapter. Nehemiah 13. What I'm going to do today, I want to keep your Bibles close to you as we walk through this passage, because I'm not going to read it all at one time, but each of my points are part of a particular passage in Nehemiah 13. I'm going to read the whole chapter, but we're going to do it point by point. I've entitled this sermon, Confronting Sin. Now, let me bring you up to history on this. Remember, Ezra came back and he helped to build the wall and get some things done. Then some of the work was left over and didn't get it all finished, and they still had to build the wall completely. And then Nehemiah was sent by the king to oversee Artaxerxes. It went before King Artaxerxes of Babylon, and had asked him permission to go and to see the progress that had been made and to get things straightened out. So in the first few chapters of Nehemiah, we see that he is working hard to rebuild the wall and rebuild the sacrifice place, and also the beginning of the rebuilding of the second temple, because the old temple, the first temple, had been torn down during the Babylonian captivity. So Nehemiah was important in helping to reestablish the religious faith of the Jewish people during that period of time, right after the Babylonian captivity. But there were some issues. Nehemiah was called back to the king for a short while. And while he was gone, several things took place, but probably a period of about a year or 2 years that Nehemiah was gone. And there were some things that took place that, it was one step forward, 2 steps backwards in what was happening with the Jewish people. And in this chapter, we see that when Nehemiah comes back, he has to address 5 issues. 5 different issues that were sin and were causing the people of Israel problems in their worship. The first one starts in verse 1. It's worship sins. Starting in verse 1, and we'll go down for a few verses. It says, on that day, they read from the book of Moses in the hearing of the people. And it was found written that no Amorite or Moabite should ever come into the assembly of God, because they had not met the children of Israel with bread and water, but had hired Balaam against them to curse them. However, our God turned the curse into a blessing. So it was when they had heard the law that they separated all the mixed multitude from Israel. All right, stop there. What was the evil? What was the evil that was there? The evil that was there was that they had hosted those that had actually rebelled against God and rebelled against the rebuilding of the temple. The Amorites, the Moabites, all of those were not a part of the Jewish faith. Now remember, these are the Jews coming back in their land after the Babylonian captivity. And they had been given specific instructions on who should be a part of worship. Now, as Christians, we say, well, everybody ought to be a part of worship. Yes, they should. I really believe that anybody should be allowed into our worship service.
Yes.
Even if they are in active sin.
That's right.
Because we are a hospital for the sinner. We're not a hotel for the saved.
Come on. Amen. Bring the sin.
We've got to realize what we are as Christians. But God also tells us that those that serve, those that are in leadership, need to be those that have been consecrated to the Lord and have given their life to serving Jesus, and that those individuals are the ones that we should recognize in our leadership and make sure of their belief and their faith.
Yes.
The Amorites had refused to help the Israelites that were coming into the land back after the Egyptian captivity. And they literally were looking to destroy them. That's when they had Balaam. Remember, they called Balaam to come and curse them.
Right.
And so they were never allowed to be a part of the faith of Israel because they had cursed God and cursed God's people. And I think we better realize that any group that curses God and curses God's people, he's going to deal with.
That's right.
He's going to bring judgment upon them.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to cause them to be, maybe not right now, but later on, will suffer the ultimate destruction that comes about in rebellion against God. So the first sin, the first one, was what? Worship sins. They had brought in people who God had said could not be a part of the congregation because of their sin against God.
Right.
Because of their rebellion against God. You cannot rebel against God unless you're willing to ask for forgiveness.
Yes.
But the Amorites had not changed their minds. They were still the same people. Moabites had not changed their mind. They were still the same people. Yet they were getting the same things that the Jewish people were, and it's because the people said, well, you know, we need to liberalize our thought. We need to be more easy towards these individuals. Folks, when sin is in the house, you need to recognize sin.
That's right. Come on.
You need to deal with it. It needs to be addressed. Remember
Confess.
when Achan sinned by keeping some of the plunder when Jericho was destroyed?
Yes.
Do you remember what happened? They went up against the little city of Ai, and they got defeated.
Yeah.
All of Israel that was up against the little city of Ai got defeated, and they wondered why they had. Well, it was because Achan had kept some of the booty and had hidden it in his tent, and there was sin in the camp.
Sin in the camp. Come on.
We've got to deal with sin in the camp.
That's right.
And if we don't address it, if we don't recognize it, then we are not going to receive the blessings of God.
That's right.
God is going to withhold those blessings as long as we allow sin to go on, especially blatant sin.
Mm.
It cannot stand in the congregation. It was a worship sin, folks. They had a sin in the worship. The next one is evil on the inside. Now, before this, Elisha, the priest, had authority over the storerooms of the house of our God, was allied with Tobiah. And he had prepared for him a large room where previously they had stored the grain offerings and the frankincense, the articles, the tithes of grain, the new wine and oil, which were commanded to be given to the Levites and singers and gatekeepers, and to the offerings for the priest. But during this, I was not in Jerusalem. See, this is Nehemiah saying, I wasn't here when this happened. It says, for in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes, king of Babylon, I had to return to the king. Then after certain days, I obtained leave from the king. And I came to Jerusalem and discovered the evil that Elisha had done for Tobiah, and prepared a room for him in the courts of the house of God. And it grieved me bitterly. Therefore I threw out all the household goods of Tobiah out of the room. And then I commanded them to cleanse the room, and I brought back into them the articles of the house of God, with the grain offering and of the frankincense. Evil inside. Elisha, the priest. By the way, he was kin to Tobiah. He had kinship there. Who is Tobiah? Tobiah and Sanballat, if you'll remember, the ones that actually came against the rebuilding of the wall and against the temple, and wrote to the governor and to the king and caused all kinds of troubles for the Israelite people. They were going to bring direct destruction against what was being rebuilt. They were, of course, not of the Jewish race. They were of the Samaritan race, and they were decided that they were going to destroy this. They had first offered to be allowed to help rebuild, because they said we worship the same God. Not really. Well, you see, the Samaritans worship Shamash, they worship Baal, they worship Ashtaroth, they worship all of those that were used. And by the way, Baal and Shamash are the ones in which they sacrifice children to.
Yeah. Yes.
Baal, they actually cast the children into the belly of an idol and burned them. Shamash, they just sacrificed them, and it could have been any means of sacrifice. But those were the gods that Tobiah and Sanballat and all of those people were worshiping. Heaven help America when we look at how many children have been dead because of abortion.
That's right.
Are we not also worshiping the God of Baal and Shamash? Will we not also be judged as a nation
Yes.
because of what we are doing? I believe we will. Now, what about individual Christians that don't believe in that? I believe that we take our stand against that, and we protest against that, and we also give our voice in saying how wrong it is. We have that duty. Just as the people of that day said, we cannot accept these foreign gods. Elisha had built a nice room in the temple, in the court part of the temple, for Tobiah, his relative. Not only was it just a special room, but it was a room in which all of the offerings and tithes were to come and to be stored in. You know what the shame was there? The fact that it was empty. The fact that that storehouse was empty. That was the storehouse in which the tithes and offerings and the grain offerings and all the offerings that the Leviticus commanded of the Jewish people, it was empty. It means that the house of the Lord was not being supported. It means that their faith was not being supported. Their priests weren't being paid. Their singers weren't being supported. All of the things that were supposed to be supported by those offerings and tithes were not being supported. God's work wasn't being supported.
Ministry was hindered. Come on.
Tobiah had taken the room. He saw the shame of Israel. I was reading the other day an interesting little illustration about a young pastor that went into a little community. And he had struggled to help that little 20-member church to grow. He did everything he could. He had went door to door. He had advertised. He had talked to people. He had tried to get them to come. Finally, after about 6 or 7 months, he decided he was just going to have to give up. So he announced one Sunday morning that they were going to have a funeral at the church. They were going to bury the church. And everybody thought in the community, man, we've never seen this. We've never seen the church die or have a funeral. So we're going to go. And lo and behold, that Sunday morning, the pews were packed. People were lined out in the back, standing around the windows because they had never seen a funeral of a church. The pastor got up and he preached a message about the death of a church. And he said, as you come by, I want you to remember what God has said here through his word. And every person started to file by the casket as the casket was opened. And as each one looked at the casket, there was a change of expression upon their face. For you see, inside the casket was a mirror. The death of a church doesn't come because the building falls down. The death of a church comes because the people stop supporting it.
That's right. That's right.
A dead church means the people have given up on God.
Yeah. Quit working.
And that's what they had done here. And it was to the Jewish people's shame that Tobiah was living in that. Notice what Nehemiah did. He threw him out. He came in, packed his dudes up, threw all of his furniture out, all of his clothes, everything that he had in there. And I imagine he had a stiff warning from Tobiah as well. It says that they restored the things that were to be in that room.
Yes.
You see, it had to take some reformation to get the evil out inside. The third thing was the depleted storehouse. And I also realized that the portions for the Levites had not been given. For each of the Levites and their singers who had did the work had gone back to the fields. In other words, they had gone back to their secular living. They had been called to do ministry, but they had gone back to secular living. It says, so I contended with the rulers, and I said, why is the house of God forsaken? And I gathered them together and set them in their place. And then all Judah brought the tithe of the grain and the new wine and the oil to the storehouse. And I appointed as treasurer over the storehouse Shemaiah the priest, and Zadok the scribe of the Levites. Adiah, the next of them was Hanan, the son of Zakur, and the son of Matthiah. For they were considered faithful, and their task was to distribute to their brethren. Remember me, O my God, concerning this, and do not wipe out my good deeds that I have done for the house of my God and for its service. He went to the people and said, it's wrong that the house of God is empty. It's wrong. And he went to the leaders, and he went to the kings, and he said, why have you allowed this to take place? Why have you stopped the ministry of God? Why is the storehouse empty? Not only was it for the priests and for the singers in the ministry, but it was also for the needy. It was also for the poor that the storehouse was there. It was also for the people. They had stopped ministry in the community and in the land because they had failed to give their tithe. Well, Malachi says, it says, how can a man rob God? He robs me of my tithes and my offerings. What is those tithes and offerings? They are there to support the ministry that you have selected to do as a congregation and as a church. They are there to reach out to the lost. You can't do it unless it's supported. Our missionaries can't do it unless we support them. Our young people that just went down to New Orleans, if they hadn't had the support of this church, they wouldn't have been able to go. You know why? We did that because we love them and we want them to see what missions is really like. But we also got to remember that ministry has to go on. I'll never forget one time when I was kind of in between churches when I was director of missions. I wasn't preaching in one place or another, but I was sitting in one of the churches, and the pastor began to say, he said, you realize what the biggest problem we have within the church is? It's summertime, when everybody goes on vacation to take their tithes with them. Mm-hmm. I thought, spoke well, but truthfully. And if you go back over and you look at it, that's that whole thing. If you set 10 years of offering giving in this church, and I can tell you the weak times and the strong times, you can see it. You can set it by a graph. We forget that ministry is ongoing. It doesn't stop. And they had forgotten about the ministry. They had decided that the storehouse didn't need it. They needed it more. That means that we've got our priorities wrong. That means that we haven't got God first. God has to be first in our life. And when He's first, He'll take care of all the rest. It takes some faith and it takes some trust to do so. Sabbath sins. In verses 15 it says, in those days I saw the people of Judah treading wine presses on the Sabbath and bringing in sheaves and loading donkeys with their wines, grapes, figs, and all kinds of burdens. When they had brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day, and they warned them about the day on which they were selling provisions. Now men of Tyre dwelt there also, who brought in fish and all kinds of goods and sold them on the Sabbath to the children of Judah and in Jerusalem. Then I contended with the nobles of Judah and said to them, what evil thing is this that you do, by which you profane the Sabbath day? Did not your fathers do thus? And did not our God bring all this disaster on us and on this city? Yet you bring added wrath on Israel by profaning the Sabbath. So it was at the gates of Jerusalem as it began to be dark before the Sabbath that I commanded the gates to be shut and charged that they must not be opened till after the Sabbath. Then I posted some of my servants at the gate so that no burden would be brought in on the Sabbath day. Now the merchants and the sellers of all kinds of wares lodged outside Jerusalem once or twice. Then I warned them and said to them, why do you spend the night around the wall? If you do so again, I will lay hands on you. From that time on, they came no more on the Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. This is one we might be a little guilty of, folks. How many of y'all remember the blue laws? Nothing was sold on Sunday. They were doing business on the Sabbath. God has said, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. But they were doing business. Our culture has now ignored that Sunday is a day of worship.
Yep.
They do business.
Yep.
And the problem is they couldn't do business if we didn't do business with them.
That's right. Come on.
That's where the problem lies. Are we doing business and ignoring the Sabbath? You see, that's what the sin was there. It was a Sabbath sin. They were selling their wares. They were bringing in the produce, and they were setting up the marketplaces there in the city on the Sabbath day, when that day was to be given to God and worship of Him. Well, and now it was pretty tough. You went around and told them all, don't come on Sabbath day. Now, of course, Sabbath was Saturday for the Jewish people. That was the last day of the week. Sunday is the first day of the week.
Right.
We worship on Sunday because that's the day Jesus arose. It's the first day of the week that we celebrate. But it's just as important to remember that the first day is as much holy to God as the Sabbath day is, because His Son arose on that first day. That's why we must be careful about what we do as a church on that day of worship. Our focus needs to be upon God, not upon material things. Our focus needs to be on serving Jesus, not upon how we're going to get the best buy or do the best sell. I know I have men, and I have met them, that the reason they joined the church is because it's a place where they can do business on Sunday. God help them when they stand before Jesus. They're going to have to answer for that. But we are just as guilty, folks. We cause people to work on the Sabbath. Don't step on your toes. How many are you going to go out and eat afterwards? You're making that person work on the Sabbath. Ouch. We are just as guilty as Israel. And I cannot claim that I am perfect, because I have done so also. Sabbath sins. And notice that they couldn't get away from doing it, that they had to sit on the outside of the wall and try to do business outside the wall. And finally, Nehemiah said, if you don't get out of here, I'm going to lay hands on you. Sounds like this old boy was tough. I believe that he was trying to bring reform to Israel and get them back to focus upon what's important and who God is. Lastly, marriage sins. In those days, I also saw Jews who had married women of Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. And half of their children spoke the language of Ashdod and could not speak the language of Judah, but spoke according to the language of one or the other people. So I contended with them and cursed them and struck some of them and pulled out their hair and made them swear by God, saying, you shall not give your daughters as wives to their sons, nor take their daughters for your sons or yourself. Did not Solomon, king of Israel, sin by these things? Yet among many nations there was no king like him, who was beloved as of his God, and God made him king over all Israel. Nevertheless, pagan women caused him to sin. Should we then hear of your doing all these great evils, transgressing against our God by marrying pagan women? One of the sons of Joab, the son of Elishabeth, the high priest, was the son-in-law of Sanballat, the Horite. Therefore I drove him from me. Remember them, O God, because they have defiled the priesthood and the covenant of the priesthood and the Levites, Thus I cleanse them of everything pagan. I also assign duties to the priest and to the Levites, each to his service, and to bring the wood offerings and the fruit offerings at appointed times. Remember me, O God, for good. He challenged the marriage rights. You see, the Jews had been said not to marry, had been told not to marry outside their faith. You see, is that a real problem today? Yeah. The Bible tells us not to be unequally yoked. In other words, if we're going to get married, we need to seek out, if we're a Christian, we're going to get married, we need to seek out someone who is a Christian. I've heard so many young ladies come to me and say, well, you know, maybe he'll become a Christian after I marry him. You're not going to change him after you marry him. He is what he is at that point in time. If he doesn't change before you get married, don't look for him to change afterwards. It's not going to happen. Oh, there are rare occasions when it has. But the truth is, if you're going to be Christian in your faith, you need to marry somebody who has the same views about Christ. Now, I'm not talking denominational here. I'm talking about your belief in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. Because I believe there are Christians in all denominations. And I also believe there are lost people in all denominations. But when we look to that mate that's going to walk beside us for a lifetime, you need to have some compatibility concerning your faith. Because let me tell you something, that Jesus is not the center of your marriage, you're going to have problems from the word go. That's why he was very strong on this, because you see, it wasn't that the people were bad. It was the fact that the people that were outside the Jewish faith were worshiping other gods and wouldn't turn from them. That's the issue here. Nehemiah had to confront sin. My friends, I want you to know that we also have to confront sin. We're going to have to confront it every day of our life. As Christians, we are going to have to see what's going on and look Satan in the face sometimes and say no, because it's wrong. We're going to have to call sin, sin, and be honest about it. The Bible tells us, of course, with the change that came to take place when Jesus Christ died upon the cross, our ministry changed as a people. Mm-hmm. Our ministry now does not block marriages like they did back then, but they tell us not to be unequally yoked. Right. And that unequal yoke means you need to find that compatibility of faith, regardless of who that mate might be, nationality-wise or anything. If there's a Christian faith that is in both lives, it's okay.
Follow Christ. That's right.
Follow Christ. Let me tell you, I don't know how many times I have counseled young people that have went ahead and married outside their faith. And I've seen what happened to the family as they go along. It's a struggle. It's a struggle. Marriage is tough every day of the week. Mm-hmm. It's a building process. It's a trust process. Look for that. But as we look at these sins, God walked all over my feet. Mm. Made me realize there are some things that I have done myself to dishonor Him. I've had to get down on my knees and ask Him to forgive me. Maybe He's speaking to you today. Maybe He's calling you to be one of His followers. If you think that the Christian life is easy, let me counsel you, it's not. It's not a bed of roses. It's easy to accept Jesus, but it's hard to follow. That's the key. God made it easy for us to become Christians. But He told us there's going to be requirements of discipleship afterwards. Mm-hmm. you need Christ today, I want to give you the opportunity.